Welcome to Paranormal Heart, a place where people can talk about their paranormal experiences. With your host, Kat Ward.
Welcome, my friends, to Paranormal Heart Podcast, a safe place to talk about your paranormal encounters. I'm your host, Kat Ward. I'm back. I do apologize for not having a new episode 2 weeks ago. A family member had surgery and I was taking care of him. He's back on his feet and recuperating nicely. I want to thank you all for being so patient with me. And thank you to those of you who sent me well wishes, prayers, and good vibes our way. We really do appreciate you all. Thank you. In episode 120 of the podcast, my special guest is Deborah Roque. Deborah is a researcher, writer for Paranormality Magazine, intuitive, tarot reader, and guide. Deborah talks about some paranormal experiences she's had, parapsychology, and how she offers a safe place to those looking for answers to the paranormal experiences they're having, and helps others to understand and learn about their psychic gifts. If you have any stories related to paranormal experiences like ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, extraterrestrials, local legends, or your psychic gifts, I would love to hear from you. You can be a guest on the show and share your story, or you can send me your real story for me to narrate on the show. You can reach out to me at paranormalheart13@gmail.com. If you want to remain anonymous, I will make sure not to mention your real name. The new episodes of the show are released on the second and last Sunday of each month at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find me on YouTube, Podbean, and all major podcast platforms. If you wish to support the show, please share it with others, like each episode, and don't forget to leave a comment. It will help us reach more people and make them realize that they are not alone in their paranormal experiences. Additionally, you can now find Paranormal Heart Podcast merchandise on TeePublic. You can buy mugs, t-shirts, hats, and more. So please share the TeePublic link with others. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, Deborah. Welcome to Paranormal Heart.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here, Kat.
So am I. So this is great. So why don't we start off by you telling us a little bit about your background and how you got into the paranormal?
Oh, that's a pretty long story, I guess. I'm going to try to condense it. So I am originally from Miami, Florida. And when I tell this story, I always mention the fact that I grew up in not only in my Hispanic household, my parents were Cuban, or are Cuban. My mom's, how do I say that? Like my dad's passed away. My mom isn't, they're Cuban. So my parents are Cuban, we're Cuban. And, in that time, like in the Hispanic household, it's very common to have like Christian and Catholic beliefs. So my mom was Roman Catholic, but my dad was a complete atheist.
Oh. Wow.
So he was completely atheist. He was actually one of these very like erudite individuals. He was self-taught, self-learned. He was into books. Like you would catch him in like the public library a few weekends a month. That was him. And it was interesting because I grew up in this household. My grandmother, his mom, was very spiritual, not so much religious, but definitely spiritual. And then his stepmom, who I also called my grandmother, she was very religious as a Christian. And then my cousins, my mom's sister, married a man who was Islam, like from the Islam religion. So he was Muslim. Mm-hmm. So she converted to Islam, and my first cousins were Muslim. So I had quite a very a broad exposure to different religions and different belief systems from like a young age. And I ended up becoming an atheist myself, like in my mid to late teens, early 20s, to the dismay of my mother. And that was very interesting because I had paranormal experiences as a child, and some in like my early like teens, and then a few in like my mid 20s. But I always like, I just never really talked about them, especially after having such pushback as a kid. I didn't like, I just kind of like brushed it off. And then as an adult and all throughout my 20s, I just went straight into, materialist science. I was a major in environmental science. I'm a PhD program doing environmental science and policy. And for me, everything was just science. Like everything had a rational explanation. Until my father passed away. And that was probably the pivotal moment in my life where I decided that things were not what I thought. And it wasn't just that event, it was a series of events that happened afterwards, but that was definitely like the point where I think I always attribute like the switch to, because I know now that he came to visit me before he died or when he died. Like I can't determine which one it was. But I woke up at like 12 midnight the night that he passed away. I had spoken to him the day before. And so that that next day at midnight, I wake up very concerned for my father, which was a very weird thing. Like I had never woken up concerned for anybody's well-being or life for that matter in my life. And for me to wake up with that, like indescribable sort of fear of like something was wrong, or a dreadful feeling. I knew that it was weird, but then I kind of attributed it to maybe some sort of psychological, I guess, manifestation of fear or worry for my father's health, because he was an older dad. Like he had me when he was 40, so by this time he was 71.
Okay.
And so I had just said, "Oh, I'm just worried about him, that I'm just waking up, everything, blah blah." 2 hours later, I get a phone call from a police officer telling me that he had passed away. And so it was, I think, a very shocking moment, not only because obviously nobody ever, wants to hear the news of your parent suddenly passing, but also just how I knew something was wrong and I didn't really do anything about it. And then, but I mean, I don't blame myself. Obviously, I was in a different belief system, at that time. But the things that happened afterwards were just way too uncanny, way too synchronistic, way too like coincidental for it to just be coincidence, or for it to just not be anything. And so I got this very distinct message from my dad as, once I started developing this intuition, sort of trusting the process and becoming a little bit more well versed in the paranormal. I finally got a message of my dad that said, like, don't be like me. Like, don't do what I do. Don't make the same mistakes that I made. Like, there is a lot more out there. Figure it out. Like, find whatever makes sense to you. Like, find your way. There is spiritual, like the spiritual and the paranormal and all this is real. And so then I said, okay. And then from there, I kind of kept going, and it's been 8 years now. So here I am doing what I do.
That's amazing. So he went from on this world being an atheist, and when he finally crossed over, then he realized there's more to it, and then giving you that message. That's amazing.
I think so. I mean, that's definitely how I interpret it. And a few of my friends too. Like they were like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So did you grow up having lots of paranormal experiences and you just kept it to yourself?
So the big ones, yeah. I mean, because the first paranormal experience that I ever had, I was in, or that I remember, right? I'm not sure if I had others and I just don't remember. But the one that I definitely remember, the first one, was a UFO experience. And it was with my mom. So like I wasn't alone. It was actually my mother she was hanging clothes out to dry in the middle. Like it was like 10 o'clock at night on a school day. I remember it was a school day because I went to school the next day to tell my friends. But it was a school day and she was hanging clothes out to dry. I mean, I don't know if that's like a thing anymore, but that definitely was a thing back then. And you just hung out clothes on the clothesline. And so She was outside. She saw something and she just screams out my name. Like she screams it in Spanish too. Like it was like, Deborah! Like I was like, oh my God, something's happening. My father was sleeping. My sister, she was 5 years younger. So she must have been somewhere around the lines of like 4 years old or something. So she was sleeping too. And so I freak out because my mom is screaming my name like bloody murder.
Mhm.
And I run outside concerned that something's happening, which in retrospect, I don't know what I would have done had something been happening, but
Well, yeah.
yeah.
Hindsight, yeah.
Yeah. But I run outside and she's like, come here, come here. And I go to her and I remember her just grabbing me and like kneeling down to like my level and like pointing to the sky and being like, do you see that? Do you see that? And I'm like, yeah, mom, it's a plane. Like I was like, crazy lady. Like, what are you?
Yeah.
Like I was just like, what? And then she's like, no, no, no. Look closer. Like it's moving too slow to be an airplane. And it was just one of those things where you just kind of look up in the sky and you're staring at it for a good while and you realize that that's not a plane.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of just dawned on us. And I remember us running through the house and like going outside to the front porch and taking a good look at this thing. And it was very interesting. It was like saucer shaped. I remember it was just very beautifully colored. It had all these blinking, like dancing, colorful lights. And yeah, it was like hovering, but it wasn't really moving, and it was so still, but it was so bright, and it was beautiful, and it was silent. Like you heard absolutely nothing from this thing. And at first it was like amazement and like, wow, what is that? Like, oh my gosh. And then it finally like turned into like complete terror for me at least, because I thought of like, oh my God, I'm gonna get abducted. Like that's it. Like it's done. Like
How
I'm
old
just
were you
like
again?
I was in fourth grade. It must have
Okay.
been like 8 or 9 years old or
Yep,
something.
yep.
Yeah.
So just in case it sounds like it's disjointed, we had to stop recording briefly because we had a little one come talk to mom. So and I
Yeah.
wanted to edit that part out. So if it sounds a little disjointed, I apologize to the listeners. Okay, so you were talking about the UFO.
Yes. I think I stopped at like the amazement turned into terror.
Mm-hmm.
And that I do remember very clearly, because after that moment, I think that upon the realization that I might be abducted, because at this point, like this is what people usually talked about when they talked about UFOs
Yeah.
and aliens. I ran inside to my kitchen, and there was like a wall right next to there's like a small wall next to the refrigerator, and I just kind of sat in that little corner and like tucked my knees to my chest and just like stood there. And I remember shaking and my teeth chattering and just being absolutely terrified. And then my mom at some point had come inside the house again. She's like, I'm gonna take a video. And I mean, this was like 1990, what, 1990 something.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the big camcorders that you used to like prop on your shoulder.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was like one of those. And she was trying to get this thing to work. And it must have been like, I don't know, it felt like an eternity, but it could have only been 5-10 minutes. Like, I don't think even 10 minutes passed. And she went back outside to like go and record it because it wasn't moving. Like, it was just there. So still, I guess she had assumed that it would just stay there.
Yep.
But when she went back outside, it was gone.
Ah.
So yeah, that was our first experience. And I remember, and I think this is where I get like a lot of like, I stopped talking about stuff because I remember telling my dad and like us telling my father, and he completely dismissed it. Like he just thought that we had been seeing things. My friends at school, like they didn't really believe me. And I was like, oh, but my mom was there. And then they were like, oh, well, we'll believe you because your mom was there. And I just didn't understand that as like when I was younger, because I was just like, why would I lie
Yep.
about this? Like I have nothing to gain from this.
Yeah.
Especially as a child, you understand? So that really upset me. And then I had so I became sort of obsessed with like looking out in the sky because it was just way too fascinating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's almost, I don't even know how many of these things I've seen in my lifetime. Like,
Oh, wow.
it's almost like it's just, I don't know if it's because I'm looking for them and they come, do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
But like, I remember a lot of nights I would see things in the sky that I just couldn't explain. And I didn't understand what exactly was going on. Like, I mean, yeah, UFO, okay, but are they aliens for real? Like, are really there that many aliens here? Or is it the government? Because, everybody talks about that.
Yep.
You know, so it was just very weird. And I saw some weird ones too. I remember seeing a purple one. That one was freaky because I was outside in the backyard again. I kind of happened to look up and there was this weird purple, like weirdly shaped object in the sky. And it didn't look like a saucer. It didn't look like anything normal. It just kind of looked like a bubble. I almost, now it kind of reminds me of like a comb jelly, but not really.
Yep.
Like it was really weird and it was purple. Like I remember that.
Yeah.
So I have like again, and that was just one of them. I've seen lights come in different colors and they disappear and they kind of dance between each other. I've seen like for other saucer shaped things. I've seen a bunch of lights. I've seen just so many things that we I have just no explanation for, and I just didn't really say a lot of things because I got so dismissed and disregarded in the first place that it just didn't make any sense to start talking about it just so that people could say that I was lying or that I was crazy. You understand? So, and then I became one of those people that told other people that they were lying or crazy.
Oh, no.
Which, yeah, I mean, it's crazy how life works. And then, I got slapped back into reality once my dad passed. And now I help people who go through experiences where they feel like people are thinking that they're lying or going crazy.
Because you
'Cause
understand.
yeah, from both sides.
Yeah.
Like I get it as an experiencer, but I also understand it as a skeptic. You understand, a non-believer.
Yep.
So I definitely get it.
So it must have been so frustrating for you, too, that you've seen something strange and people just don't want to believe you.
It was very frustrating. And I think it's frustrating for anybody who goes through that because and what I've realized doing this is like, it's like questioning your integrity. Do you understand? Like, it's so much more than just questioning you whether or not your mind is playing tricks on you. It's questioning your integrity. And I think that really is like offensive to a lot of people because it's like, well, why would I? Or how do you not know me enough? Do you understand why? And I think that's where a lot of this comes from. Like this, like need or like this pool that I have to help people because it sucks to be questioned like that and to not be believed, especially from professionals or like authority figures where you're just kind of like, what? you know? So, and the sad ones are like when I read stories or like I've read stories and also have people come to me and tell me how they've tried to go to therapy for their experiences and they've been prescribed antipsychotics and things like that. And I'm just like, that's not okay.
No, it's kind of sad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You almost need to have almost like a paranormal psychologist or something to be able to help these people.
Yeah, and I mean it's funny because they do exist. The field of parapsychology exists, right, for this reason. And there are clinical parapsychologists who do help individuals who have these experiences. But I mean, where are they? Like, where are they? Like, I mean, it's not very easy to find. Most of them are overseas,
Really?
either like in Germany. Yeah, a lot of the parapsychology literature that I read is coming from Germany or France or Europe or like
Now that's
that part
interesting.
of the world. Yeah, that's where it's bigger because that's where like the big center of this like parapsychologists is. And here we have a few parapsychologists. I'm not going to say no, but it's definitely not as big. And I don't think they're doing clinical psychology. It's more like research.
Okay.
So you really don't have a lot of psychologists that are helping people. And not only that, from the papers that I have read from these parapsychologists, it's very indicative that many psychologists in general, like the field of psychology, well, first of all, the field of psychology doesn't honor the paranormal. Like, it's just not within their, I guess, their jurisdiction or whatnot. So they don't honor the paranormal. And then there are studies that have come out already saying that a lot of these a lot of these clinical psychologists, um, they don't know how to handle cases where their clients come in talking about paranormal experiences. The curriculum doesn't really show them how to navigate these matters. There's really like no parameters or like measures or scales used to help people with this. They feel like they themselves say that they're not trained in it. And then oftentimes the psychologists themselves end up having or going through there's a clash between belief systems, like whatever the patient or client is saying is going to contradict the psychologist's beliefs, and there could be bias there, or like even the like trigger some sort of ontological shock within the psychologists themselves too. So it's just like there's just so much wrong, and like so much that we don't, like we're not well equipped, like psychology, I mean,
Yep.
is not well equipped to like hold the space for experiencers, like experiences that have paranormal experiences. Yet this is one of the most common things that happens around the world, right? Like
Yep.
everybody has a paranormal experience at some point almost. And so it's just very upsetting that instead of holding the space and treating these cases back as one should, with like curiosity and openness and no judgment and things like that, they're like just dismissing it or prescribing antipsychotics. Well, the psychiatrist, because then they refer to a psychiatrist, and then the psychiatrist then
Yep.
prescribes the antipsychotics. And so that's I feel like it's an unfortunate cycle, and it's really not helping anybody kind of process their experiences very well.
I've actually known scientists like meteorologists, physicists even, who believe in the paranormal, who have had experiences, but they can't talk about it with their peers because they're going to be shunned. And it's
Yeah.
really sad. I mean, if everyone could just do, like, especially a physicist, if they could do proper research and actually present their papers on, their findings, that would be an amazing accomplishment for the paranormal field, I think.
Yeah, and I think that it has a lot to do too, from what I've been reading. Like it has a lot to do with just the connotation of the word paranormal, right? Like all of a sudden you hear paranormal and the first thing you think of is like demons and ghosts and like all this spooky stuff. And like one of the things that I always say in like my content or in whatever it is that or my interviews, is that the paranormal is so much more than just the aliens and the cryptids and
Yes.
the ghost stories and the hauntings. Like the spiritual is also paranormal, and consciousness, there's ideas of consciousness, and like that is still a paranormal concept for us because we don't know what consciousness is.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? And the paranormal is such a wide and broad field. And then for you, for you not to be able to say that you believe in the paranormal because you're going to be shunned, is kind of hypocritical, I think, because the point of science is to obtain knowledge.
Right?
And
Yep.
a lot of this stuff, at first was either paranormal or ridiculous at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And then because we became curious and because we decided to sort of go through that hunch, we know what we know now about the world. And so to me, it's just like hypocrisy.
I'm so
And I
happy
come
you
from the
mentioned that.
science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Like I
really happy
come
you mentioned that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I kept
Oh, it's
interrupting. I
okay.
was
It's
so
okay.
excited.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was exciting for me to hear you say that. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, and I say it as somebody who was like head deep into science. Like I did the academia. I was a peer reviewer for a journal. I wrote and co-wrote journal articles. I did the proposals and the grants and like the whole
Oh,
nine.
wow.
And this was my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost had a PhD, and it just all turned around for me. And I'm so glad it did, because I realized that it's all bureaucracy
Yeah.
at the end. And unfortunately, it's like I understand what those scientists and those physicists and engineers and all these people are going through, because it's true. Like, had I stayed in academia, and let's say I would believe what I believe now, I'm sure that I'd get pushback, and I'm sure that my my reputation would be put in jeopardy, especially in some fields. And it shouldn't be that way. So, but here we are,
Yep.
2024.
It seems to be not as much of a stigma, but it's still there. But it seems, I think we might, well, I'm hoping actually that will change within my lifetime anyways, where people could actually openly discuss and study and not be ridiculed.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's precisely, I mean, exactly what you said is precisely why I started what I started. It's called Paranormal Paradigm for that, in order to change the paradigm surrounding the paranormal, making it something that's not so stigmatized and stereotyped, because A, been there, done that, and B, we should be evolving, and we should be curious and wanting to know more about this life, not holding on to, these antiquated or outdated ideas that clearly are not working for us anymore. And I mean, like you said, things are changing, right? And that's amazing, but there's just still so much work to be done.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. It's like even I find equipment because I'm also a paranormal investigator. So I just find like the equipment always seems to be the same thing that everyone uses. And I'm not smart enough to be able to come up with something different. I know I want to have something different, but I don't know what that is. I have said for a long time that if I could have a pair of glasses that would enable me to see in the same spectrum as cats or dogs, because they do see different. If we could have glasses like that, that would be amazing. That would be so cool. We'd be able to see what our pets are actually looking at.
That's actually a really cool concept. I hadn't thought about something like that, but yeah, to have this sort of different vision. And I wonder what the vision spectrum is for cats and dogs. Like, where are they on the the light spectrum, and also on the vision? That'd be really cool to develop something like that.
Yeah. I'm definitely not smart enough to be able to develop something like that. So if anyone's listening to this, please contact us. We could definitely, you and me and whoever wants to develop this, maybe we can put our heads together and come up with something that would be neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be one of those engineers that believe in the paranormal.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's, I know they're out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you help people? Because I was looking at your site and it said that you offer a safe space, which I absolutely love, because I mentioned in my podcast that this is a safe space for people to talk about their paranormal experiences. And when I first started the show, I used to think that paranormal was only ghost, and I had an awakening, I guess, because there's so much more, And people are having all these experiences globally, no matter your nationality, your religion, whatever. Everyone's having these experiences. So can you explain to us how do you go about helping people once they contact you?
Yes. So as I say, I do offer a safe space. So the first thing that I try to always make sure that I do is have them feel comfortable and let them know that it doesn't matter how absurd it sounds. I'm there to listen and not to judge them, right? Like, I just want to know what is going on and what they're feeling. From there, I like to take into account their belief system, right? One of the things that I've been learning about paranormal experiences in general, just from my research, is that a lot of the paranormal experiences that we have are going to be related to our belief system. And so if you are a believer, you are already more prone to have an experience as opposed to somebody who's not a believer. And so everybody, the belief systems, as you know, across the world are just so diverse and so different. So I always try to understand the belief system first, because I'd like to use their belief system to try to help interpret what it is that's going on and why.
That's a good first step. I love that.
Thank you. So that's always number one priority, because oftentimes what happens is what I've seen in the spiritual field, because I kind of do consider myself almost like a spiritual guide. Though it's a weird situation because I do read tarot, and I've been a tarot reader for 8 years. So I take a lot from the teachings and the understandings of tarot, and I'm pretty intuitive. So I take that. But what I've noticed is that oftentimes in the spiritual field, there's a lot of like, you should do this or you shouldn't do that. And this is the way to do things. And I don't necessarily go down that route because I'm a believer that you're the creator of your own reality. And, reality is what you make of it. So we might as well understand what you think reality is or what you make of reality so that we can figure out how to best approach this situation for you. So that's what I do. And so once I understand more or less what they're believing that's happening to them, then I ask questions. And it's almost like a conversation like you're having with me right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go through the steps of what happened. What do they think it is? Are they experiencing any sort of life changes or alterations and stuff? Because this can obviously affect whether or not you're having a paranormal experience, or the types of paranormal experiences that you may be having. And then from there, it's kind of getting to, well, what do you want to do about this? Do you want to learn more about it? In which case I can give you resources and tools. You want to protect yourself, I can also I give resources and tools and offer methods of protection. And if not, if it's like, well, I don't want to deal with this anymore, then we talk about like, how can you get rid of this?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this all goes back to your own energy and your own beliefs. And it's just sort of like, it's almost like your mindset, like helping you establish the mindset that you feel you need, or the belief that you feel to make meaning of this experience so that you can accomplish whatever it is that you want from this. Like if you want to learn more about it and make meaning out of it, then I help you through the meaning making process. There is a cognitive meaning making process, and there's like a framework that we use. And then if not, then okay, sometimes people just want to know whether or not they have a demon, and oftentimes it's not.
Yeah.
Like I have not had a demon exactly on my case, and yet if I really did feel like there was a demon situation, I have somebody who I can contact who does exorcisms, so that would be something that I would help with. And then most of the time, everybody that I've talked to so far, they just kind of want answers and like kind of a guidance and kind of feel better. So I just make sure that I offer that space. And then if you want follow-ups and stuff like that, I'm always here too, and kind of help you get to those answers. I've had people that then what they do is they're like, okay, well, now that I know this, how can I have less experiences? And so we go through that. And again, it's just mindset and your beliefs and how to do that.
Yeah, I know people like cardinals and sisters and people who do exorcisms, and they all say the same thing, that demons, when people are having paranormal activity, are not as, what's the word I'm looking for? They don't happen as often, nearly as often as what people think. Thankfully.
No.
So a lot of times, I recently heard an interview by Chris. I can't remember his last name. He's the grandson of the Warrens. He has something to do with the Warren legacy. And
yes.
he was saying that, and I've been saying this for years too, that when someone's having activity, cupboard doors are opening or whatever, and they think, oh my God, it's demons, or the remote got flung at you. A lot of times these spirits, they don't quite know how to use their energy, or they're frustrated because they know they can see you and they're trying to communicate with you, and they're just frustrated. So they're just kind of like, go wild with their energy. So it doesn't always mean it's a demon.
No. And there's something else that people don't seem to understand. And this is why I ask them what's going on in your life, is because oftentimes our own energy can affect the things that, like poltergeist activity can totally be us, like our own energy, and we are not conscious of it. And so it's really about, like, the sessions that I do are really about making you conscious of not only your own belief systems, but your energy and like your environment, because that all plays into the activity that you're experiencing. And then oftentimes, and I totally forgot about this, oftentimes some of the people that I talk to are developing their gifts, like they're waking up to their gifts. And then so I also help with like providing a space for you to like practice your gifts and develop these gifts, because it happened to me. And the reason I am intuitive and I'm a tarot reader is because I kind of allowed myself, and my husband was very supportive, like explore this for myself. And,
Mm-hmm.
the one main thing about developing your gifts is you got to trust yourself, and you have to obviously develop that through
Mm-hmm.
overcoming the limiting beliefs. But also, B is learning how to become and how to get into that receptive state so that these experiences can come to you a little more fluidly, and then you can develop them and get to know your body and your environment as you're having these experiences. So it's very, I mean, there you go. Paranormal can also be gifts and like
Yep.
astral projection and mediumship abilities and all that. So
Yeah, because we're taught, mainly in North America, I find that all
Mhm.
these gifts that we have, you're not supposed to have them.
Oh yeah.
Don't acknowledge them. It comes from the devil. So when people do have these, they're trying to shut down. They're just like they don't want to have anything to do with it. And I find that can make it worse because they have a special ability that just wants to surface, and they're trying to bury it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of also I've had a couple of people come to me and they feel very ashamed about having this
Yeah.
ability because they come from a Christian or super religious, background, and so they don't want to talk about it
Mm-hmm.
because of what their family or their community may think of them. But it's nothing that has anything to do with the devil or anything negative. It is a gift.
Yes.
So that's also part of the stuff that we work on, is getting rid of the shame and the guilt surrounding these abilities and these experiences.
Yeah. Try and embrace it.
Yeah.
So when you find people that are developing their gifts, when they're
Mhm.
finally having that awakening moment, is there a particular age group, or is that pretty much any age?
Yeah, so far it's been any age. A lot of young ones, like especially now with like the spiritual movement the way it is.
Hmm.
A lot of the younger, like Gen Z generations, are
Hmm.
definitely like, I think I have some gifts and everything, which is great because I feel I'm of the sort of the school of thought that says that I think we all have gifts. It's just an issue as to whether or not, a question, not an issue. It's a question as to whether or not we develop it.
Hmm.
And if we, put the time to do that. So when people come, it's a lot of young ones, but I've definitely had individuals over 50
Oh
like
wow,
yeah, say like, I think I'm having these gifts, and it's
that's
like
interesting.
one lady was just kind of like, I didn't pay attention to it before. Now my kids are grown up and now I have like the time, and I really think that I'm in the space now where I want to kind of explore what this means for me.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, because we get busy with life. Again, we're told
Mhm.
not to look at the spiritual side. You have to focus on work, having a family, all this other stuff. They're just like, nope, it doesn't exist. And when people are really having these experiences, it can be really devastating to them, thinking, oh my, what's wrong with me because I'm having these things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And also,
Yeah.
like you just said, we're so busy. I mean, life is so difficult right now for so many of us that nobody has time to be like, oh, sorry, I can't help you right now, child, because I have to go and meditate on my gift. You understand? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I totally see why now there's also an awakening, especially with like the boomers or the Gen Xers, as they come into their gifts, because they have the time now, or they're just in a different space. So
Yep, totally agree. I'm a Gen Xer, and I've always had abilities. My mother, she was extremely French Roman Catholic. She had the prayer beads. She would pray
uh,
every day, but she also believed in the paranormal and knew that it wasn't something to be necessarily afraid of because she could talk to her grandfather without him even being in the same building. Things like that. So at least I had the kind of not really guidance because I don't think she knew how to exactly control her abilities, but an acceptance, I think. And
yeah.
my father was not a believer, but he kind of is now. Over the years, there's just too many things that he just, my mother and I finishing each other's sentences, whatever, and there's just a lot of coincidences that he's just like, okay, well, maybe there is something to it, but yeah. So when you help people like that, is it in person or is it virtual or both?
Right now Virtual. I did have an in-person group session not too long ago, a couple of months ago, here in the town that I live in Gainesville, and that was great. But it's also a lot of work that I just
Yeah.
don't. I'm not. I feel like right now the space that I'm in is just not going. mm, how can I put this? The space that I'm in, I'm just very focused on really developing this on a virtual digital platform first. And then once I get to a space where like I feel like I'm organized enough and have like a routine, like a real like, okay, like this is how exactly how I want to do this, then I can probably branch out to like the local community. But definitely doing local community first is a lot harder than I ever originally anticipated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
I'm just like,
virtually, you can reach more people too.
yeah. And that's the cool part too, is I reach people from different countries too. So, and I speak Spanish, which
Yep.
is interesting that a lot of people, Spanish speakers haven't really reached out to me. There's one girl from Portugal that she was like, hey, and one from Brazil, but definitely not like Spanish, which is interesting
Huh.
because of the belief system within the Spanish culture.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, oh, I wonder if that has a lot to do with it.
Maybe. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. Do you find
Yeah.
it easier doing it in person or virtual?
So I do find it easier when I'm in person just because of what I've done all my life. So just all my life, I've been a person I've been on stage. You understand? Like, so when I was 18, I used to be an educator for an outreach educator for a museum, and I worked in the museum for 8 years.
Oh,
This
wow.
museum for 8 years, and I used to do outreach and education. And so me being in front of people and educating and like talking about things comes very naturally to me, especially when I was like in my PhD program and doing like presentations and poster presentations and things like that. Like that for me comes so natural. So when I'm in a group of people, um, I do really well reading the room and kind of feeding off the vibes of people. And it's just a
Yep.
really great and energetic space as opposed to the internet where
Yeah.
like like it's like how you just what you talked about when we first got on, like it's nicer to see a face and then that you can kind of vibe with the person, but when
Yep.
it's not like that, it's definitely a lot harder to navigate. And sometimes like I do find it a little difficult to navigate because the energy is not the same, and people can lie. So it's a lot easier to lie when there's no face and like nobody there to like, you understand? So
Yes.
it's a little more difficult, but I still like it.
Nice. Yeah.
Hmm.
I find sometimes like when what you just mentioned about when I speak to people and that they don't want to have the camera on for whatever reason, and I'm totally fine with it. But I feel there's a disconnect a little bit.
Yeah.
If I can see them, then it's just the conversation just flows a little smoother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also respect people who don't want to show
Oh,
me their face too, because
yep.
it's a sensitive subject. And especially if you feel like, your reputation is on the line and things like that. I get it. You understand? But it's like you said, it just makes it a little bit more difficult, but not impossible.
So true. Yeah.
Mhm.
So when you help people, is there a fee for that?
Yes, I do have fees. So for a one-on-one, just like a regular conversation session is $44.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
take insurance and anything. Yeah, I try to keep it low cost because I know what it is. And obviously my time is valuable and their time is valuable. But I'm not like, I also know that I'm not like a licensed therapist. You understand?
Gotcha.
So like,
Yep.
do you understand? So like what I'm giving you mostly is information that you have in front of you, like inside of you all the time. It's just sort of guiding you
Mm-hmm.
so that you kind of feel more empowered and trust yourself a little more to be able to take these steps, and then get these answers. So I'm definitely more as a guide. So I try to keep the prices low for that. I do family sessions too. So for a family session, it's a little more because I'm dealing with a few more people in the group, and also because we're dealing with children, which I feel is a little bit more sensitive.
Yep.
So for that, I think, my God, Do I remember my prices right now? No, I don't. This is a
That's
family. I
okay.
haven't actually had a family session in a long, long time, and I changed my prices this year. So let me just double check so I'm not giving you
Sure.
wrong like stuff. But that's family, and then I do group sessions. Group sessions are $20 per person. Uh, there's about one a month, and then I kind of announce it on my social media. It's a specific date, so people just sign up and sign in, and then we talk about, people's different experiences. And if there's any specific questions, like again, I guide them to certain, answers, or where to find these answers for themselves. And then there's tarot sessions, which I definitely offer. And tarot sessions are $62 an hour. I do a lot of tarot. So
Nice.
people are always asking for things and stuff. And I'm more than happy to provide tarot sessions for people. It's actually one of my favorite things to do.
Those are
And
very
then,
reasonable prices. Wow.
thank
Yeah.
you. And then family sessions, $55.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's $55. And like I said, I'm not trying to rob you. I just really want to help you
Yeah.
and also try to make a living. So it's like kind of like a little bit of a balance.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And what you
yeah.
mentioned that you're just helping people to guide them where they already probably have the knowledge and the information that they need, but we all have self-doubt. We get in
Mhm.
our own heads. So to have someone like you to actually guide and give validation, that's amazing.
Oh, thank you. I hope that I'm doing something right because like I get it, and if I had somebody like, I'm very lucky that this sort of awakening started right around the time, like maybe like 1 year before I met my husband. And when I met my husband, I was like full-fledged, fully in,
Mhm.
and I did not have any kickback or any resistance from him. As a matter of
Good.
fact, he was just like, yeah, this stuff exists. I don't know how you didn't believe in this stuff
Oh,
before.
wow.
Yeah,
That's
he was just like,
amazing.
do it. And I was like, okay. So
Nice.
he was very supportive, and I think a very integral part of my evolution.
And that is so important too, to have your significant
Yeah.
other support you like that, because you might not be able to fully immerse yourself and concentrate on all this. You might want to pull back a little bit, or not even do it at
Yeah.
all. So yeah, that's kudos to
Hmm.
him.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
He loves it. It's free. It freaks him out, but he loves it. So
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, my husband doesn't like it when I do investigations. I'm pretty much on a hiatus right now.
Hmm.
He's very religious. I'm more spiritual. He'll
Hmm.
never tell me to stop doing it, but he just says, be careful.
Yeah.
He is supportive,
Yeah.
at least. So yeah,
That's all that matters. As long as you have that support. I mean,
exactly.
support goes such a long
It
way. And
does.
so many of us come from, backgrounds or situations that just don't offer that type of support. So, I'm definitely here, especially when it comes to the paranormal, right?
Yeah,
I'm definitely here to kind of change that and provide a space for
nice.
that. Hmm.
So do you also write for a magazine?
I
Okay. What's
do.
the name of the magazine, and can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So it's a small magazine for now. I mean, they're growing. They've grown a lot, actually. It's called Paranormality Magazine, and it's like a husband-wife endeavor. They obviously have a few other people like that are like a part of this, and
Hmm.
it's a small group of us, about maybe like 10 writers or
Mm.
something. And we just focus on all topics that relate to the paranormal. I personally, my columns are typically just focused on creators. Like, I love to interview creators
Hmm.
that are in the paranormal field and kind of get a gist of, who they are, what they do, why they're doing it, and if they have any like, impactful paranormal experiences themselves that kind of like inspired them to do what they're doing now. And I kind of just write a column and then trying to get the exposure and help other creators out,
Oh,
especially,
wow.
in this very competitive and big world that we live
Yeah,
in.
and busy world.
And busy world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Do you find during COVID and even now that maybe more people are noticing more UFOs, or they're having more paranormal encounters? Because I know up here in Canada, when things were shut down, they didn't even want us to leave our properties, like, you could stay in the house, but stay on your property. Don't leave unless you're one of the essential workers. And I found after a while when we were able to go out, leave our property, there's a lot more families out for walks. More kids were playing outside. It was almost like there was a reset button. So have you noticed any differences during, like, since COVID, that more people are more aware because now they're noticing a lot more?
I definitely do, especially on the internet. And I think it's because, like you said, we were in a shutdown, and what were people going to do? You
Yep.
understand? It was either the internet or like read.
Yeah.
And so you gave people, like literally the governments of the world gave people the time to expand themselves and take a rest. And those that took advantage of that time and started reading or really getting into the information on social media and stuff, like that brought awareness. You understand? That made us more conscious. And now, like, whatever was being talked about in the paranormal pre-COVID is like not even, I don't even, like a fraction of whatever is happening now. Like after COVID, it's just a surge of all this paranormal information with oh my god, from everything, even conspiracy theories and alien and UFO encounters. And we have like this disclosure happening, which has become huge in the last couple of years. And I think it's because we were kind of on a standstill. We were standby. We had the opportunity to just rest and pay attention to things that maybe typically we wouldn't have paid attention to, especially like the sky.
Yeah, like take time to stop and smell the roses type thing.
Yeah.
People were just like, what are we going to do? So yeah, I felt that way too, that more people are noticing more. They have more situational awareness now.
Yes,
Yeah.
I completely agree. And I think that's why we've seen such a big surge in spirituality and in the paranormal in the last few years, for sure.
I'm wondering if all of these experiences and encounters were there before, but people were just so busy they just didn't notice them. And now people are just opening their eyes and they're like, oh, look at this.
Yeah, and I think it's twofold. I think it's that. And I also think it's because it's become such a big topic and so popular and it's more accepted, more people are now open and more willing to talk about the experiences that they typically would have just brushed aside in the first place.
For sure. Yeah, totally agree on that.
Yeah.
Wow. So we're at the end here already. Good grief.
Oh my goodness.
I would definitely like to invite you to come back at some point. I absolutely love talking to you.
Thank you. Same.
But if you could tell the listeners where they can find you if they're looking for help in anything, and where to find the magazine as well. Oh, I forgot to ask: is it paper copy magazine or is it digital or both?
So they do both.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's mostly digital. But they do have a section where you can order your paper copy, and you just kind of jump on that and order your copy, and you get it sent to your house.
Oh, cool. Do you ship just in the U.S. or is it anywhere? Pretty much.
I'm not that. I have to double check.
Okay.
I'll ask and I'll let you know, or I'll
Okay.
just double check on their website. I'm pretty sure they should at least do US and Canada.
Yeah.
Not sure if they do like Central or South America, but
shipping might be atrocious. So
maybe.
So where can listeners find you?
So I always encourage them to visit first my website. There's a lot more complete info on there. So www.paranormalparadigma.com. And if websites aren't your thing, social media, I'm on it. So Instagram is the primary platform that I use. It's my favorite so far. I'm also on TikTok, so you can see me on there. And I'm on Facebook and Threads. But Threads I really don't do. So basically Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram.
Okay.
You can find me on there at the same handle. Well, no. TikTok and so TikTok and Instagram, it's Paranormal Paradigma, at Paranormal Paradigma. And then Facebook is actually my name, Deborah Roque, Roque. And Deborah's Deborah. And I do have a page that's called, like a group, Paranormal Paradigma, that you can join.
Nice. And the listeners already know that I'll be adding the links in the show notes, so it'll be much easier to find you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Muchas gracias.
De nada.
So, yes, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. So you take care, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Absolutely. I look forward to being back.
Well, we've made it to the end of another episode. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, take care of each other. And if you'd like to be on the show or have questions and comments, just drop me an email, paranormalheart13@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Paranormal Heart would like to extend a special thank you to purpleplanet.com for supplying the music for the show. The views and opinions expressed on Paranormal Heart are those of the host and participants.
Paranormal Heart Podcast.